Each week, American History TV's American Artifacts takes you to museums and historic places. Up next, we travel to Philadelphia to learn about the Museum of the American Revolution. Located 2 blocks from Independence Hall, the museum is scheduled to open in early 2017.
The collections of the museum are incomparable. They really have no peer. We have objects related to Washington which truly are unique, one of a kind. And they bring to life his leadership, his incredible role in keeping the Continental Army together and never wavering from his goal of success. At the same time, we have objects that represent the common foot soldier, the cavalryman. We have objects that reflect the role of not just American soldiers, but British and French and Native Americans. So our collection will enable us to really present the entire story of the American Revolution to all who come to Philadelphia.
As American colonists begin shouting very loudly and increasingly loud about their rights as Englishmen, and they're feeling that there is a conspiracy to enslave them underway in the British Parliament, the whole issue of slavery, of chattel slavery, increasingly the contradiction of these calls for liberty with the presence of slavery, particularly in America. Of course, it existed in Britain at the time, but it was particularly widespread in America, becomes louder and louder. And so this next item is a really incredibly rare and important work. This is a volume of poems published in London in 1773 by a young woman named Phillis Wheatley, who's the first published African-American poet in American history. Phillis Wheatley had been enslaved on the west coast of Africa, probably in Gambia or Senegal, and brought to the New World in the 1750s. As a young girl, maybe about 8 years old, she eventually was sold to a family by the name of Wheatley in Massachusetts, and the daughter in the family taught her to read and write, and she had a real natural talent for writing verse. And of course, at the time, this was an extraordinary development, so much so that there were those, as she began publishing pieces in the newspaper and they began to be circulated, there was actually a trial held in Boston where people like John Hancock and other significant figures in the community were brought together to basically put her on trial, ask her questions, to try to determine if it was possible that this African-American woman could have written poetry like this. Of course, she passed, and they actually wrote a testimonial saying that they believed that she, in fact, had been the talented writer who'd produced this poetry. And so in 1773, she traveled to London, and this volume was published. It's also remarkable in that we have an engraved image, presumably a good physical likeness of Phillis Wheatley. This volume, and I'll turn the page to show you, is also it would be wonderful even by itself, but it is one of the few examples that have actually come down to us with Phillis Wheatley's signature on the volume. And it just doesn't get better than that. You know, trying to find the sort of tangible objects that allow us to discuss the very important contributions of African Americans to the founding period of our nation. It can be a real struggle as a curator to try to find this material, so we are incredibly blessed to have that volume available to us and to share with our visitors once we're open. And that will be in that same gallery located right next to the Liberty Tree, so our visitors can reflect on the contradiction between these calls for liberty and the continued persistence of slavery.
The museum will be located in the very heart of Philadelphia's historic area. The National Park Service agreed with the importance of this museum and gave up ownership of part of Independence Park, just so this museum could be built within 2 blocks of Independence Hall. So every visitor who comes to discover the birthplace of America will now have an opportunity to learn the larger context the story of the American Revolution and how that independence and that liberty was achieved.